We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Has the once venerated Fourth Estate played a significant role in conning the American people? As more and more people come to believe that the President of the United States is just play-acting the role, how long will it be before the ever-supportive media have to volte-face and perhaps accidentally commit real journalism? Add this to the disconnect between what the legacy media tells us is happening and what we can see with our very own lying eyes. And what you have here is not just a failure to communicate, but rather a tipping point where the faith in the organs of state turns from disinterest to outright dislike. And where do we go from there? Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we're going to examine the state of the president's health, both physical and mental, and ask if the media can ever truly be held accountable. We'll be joined by Sarah Cowgill to discuss the revamped campaign of Georgia hopeful Stacey Abrams. We're asking the tough questions about the recent video conference between Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden, and we'll be tackling the tough cases of the week in our special Talking Liberty segment. I'd like to say a special hello to our listeners in Park Hill, Missouri on KFMO 1240 AM. Thanks for being part of the team. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. With Russian President Vladimir Putin and President Joe Biden holding a virtual meeting to discuss the future of Ukraine, watchers were wondering if the American president had the stomach for the fight. Now, although serious details of what happened are short on the ground, it doesn't take a Sherlock Holmes-style figure to parse out the spin from the concrete results. Nonetheless, we have our very own political sleuth and former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller Dave Patterson to highlight some of the more notable elements of this semi-historic quasi-summit. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Thank you very much, Mark. Happy to be here.
So, Dave, give us a brief overview of what this was all about and the current situation on the ground in Ukraine.
Well, the short answer is that Russia moved 94,300 troops to the Ukraine border, giving every indication that they had an invasion in mind and planned. But that was actually back in April. So the tension on the border has been building, and recent U.S. intelligence reports regarding increased cyber activity has simply fueled those tensions. During the Putin-Biden talks, a firefight broke out with machine gun and grenade launchers between the Ukraine ground forces and the Russian-backed separatists in the eastern region of Donetsk of Ukraine, which of course was added emphasis to the content of the meeting.
So these two world leaders met. Did they achieve anything substantive, or was it more a high-profile meeting for domestic consumption?
Well, if you listen to Jake Sullivan's Tuesday debrief following the meeting, the answer is no. Effectively, Biden said what the White House said he would say, and Putin said what the Kremlin said he would say. And so no commitments were made by either side. And I believe the press would have appreciated if some more specifics had been given over to them during that press briefing. But if laying the groundwork for additional meetings is progress, then in White House parlance, some was made. But basically, it was typical Biden White House, lots of words and no substance. As for the meeting being for domestic consumption, again, Putin met the needs of the Russian people, and Biden was diplomatically astute by liberal standards, feckless, weak, and compromising for the rest of us. And Europe, I don't think, can take any comfort from what we heard coming from that meeting.
It reminds me very much of an episode of the old British show, Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister is wanting to figure out what he's going to talk about with the foreign leader, and his diplomat, Sir Humphrey, says, no, all these things are already discussed in advance. We wouldn't let two world leaders actually figure out what needs to be talked about. So let's move on to the Nord Stream 2 for a moment. So this is the energy pipeline from Russia to Germany, and that's the big bargaining chip, I think, for Joe Biden, or so it seems. But it does seem to me that this would require German cooperation or cooperation from the European Union as well. But in the midst of a German winter, regardless of what Vladimir Putin decides to do, I can't see any way that Joe Biden is going to force Germany to cooperate with US interests in saying no to all that gas and oil that they need.
Well, let's for a moment talk about what this Nord Stream 2 pipeline is all about. First of all, it's 750 miles from Vyborg to Russia to Lublin in Germany, through the Baltic Sea, incidentally bypassing Poland and Ukraine. Well, the pipeline would carry approximately 55 billion metric meters of natural gas to Europe. But Germany has not certified its operation. So although it's completed, it's not delivering gas. And Europe, it might be interesting to know, imports about 43% of its natural gas from Russia. So it's a big deal for Europe. Under the Trump administration, with the US having basically energy sufficiency, we could have complemented the natural gas deliveries to Europe. But under the Biden administration, that's not possible.
Okay, and one final question, please, Dave. In the Pentagon, there must be hundreds of people who war game different geopolitical scenarios and then stress test them for probability. So did the Defense Department see this coming? I mean, you mentioned that the troops were amassed there, 93,000 troops back in April. Because it seems to me that although the US government must surely have some indication here, the administration seems to be taken by surprise.
Well, whereas the administration, as a metaphor for the White House, yeah, I think they were taken by surprise. For the Pentagon, these kinds of contingencies are planned for and war gamed, and not the specifics necessarily, but for example, I mean, you have seen a lot of folks in the Pentagon talking about the Baltics. And because they're part of NATO, we have built them up with forces, U.S. forces. And so I think that the quick answer to your question is yes, they do these kinds of war gaming exercises.
Dave Patterson, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark. Always happy to be with you.
Coming up later in the show, we're talking Liberty with Scott Cosenza. What's happening in the courts and how does the media coverage measure up? But next up on Liberty Nation Radio, we're speaking with the fount of knowledge of all things political, Tim Donner. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.